Before we dive into today's episode, I want to highlight one of the core values of Fame Ready: expansion. Because building a profitable business isn't just about creating something great, it's about differentiation and standing out. And if you run a retail shop, you know just how hard that can be. Your brand, whether it's a personal brand, a product, or a storefront, is shaped by what people associate with you. And for retailers, that includes what's on your shelves. Finding unique products your customers won't see in big box stores takes time. Sourcing can be exhausting, and tying up your cash flow in new inventory, that's risky. That's why I'm so excited to partner with Fair. Fair is the largest online wholesale marketplace connecting hundreds of thousands of brands and retailers around the world. It makes discovering unique products simple and testing new inventory far less stressful. Retailers get net 60 payment terms, which means you can sell your inventory before you even have to pay for it. And they offer free returns on first orders, so you can try new brands with confidence. And if you're a brand listening, Fair also helps your products get discovered by retailers globally without endless cold pitching, because you know we hate a cold pitch on this show. If growing your shop, differentiating your inventory, and strengthening your brand reputation is part of your next level strategy, I highly recommend checking out Fair. If you're a retailer and you haven't placed an order through Fair before, you can find the link in the show notes and use code Katrina10 for 10% off your first order. Now, let's get into today's episode. All right, you guys, welcome back to Fame Ready, the podcast to show you that anything is possible. Yes, including fame. I'm your host, top personal brand and public relations expert, Katrina Owens. And today we're gonna talk about something really tangible. And it's something that I think I've referenced in like various episodes. And for some reason, it was on my calendar to talk about this today, even though it's not my favorite topic to talk about. Let's just get that out of the way right now. I might also be in a bit of a weird mood, so that could be part of my block. But today I want to talk to you about an asset that is so important if you're building a personal brand. And I think why I'm like feeling blocked around it is because it's not as simple as me just saying, each and every one of you need a media kit, and here's what you need to include. Because when I started my career in PR, media kits were like very simple. Okay. You really only needed one. And it, in its essence, is designed to provide a journalist with more context about who you are and what you do and why the publications should essentially cover you. And that was it. Very easy to put together, very, very straightforward. But now that we live in a time where shit has changed. And there isn't really like cookie cutter, one size fits all kind of things that we can create in our business. And in so many different ways, people ask me, what's a media kit? Do I need one? What needs to be in it? And my answer is always, well, it depends on what your goals are. And I think that makes it really complicated because I want to do an episode on media kits because it's an asset that each and every personal brand should have. But when I was thinking about this episode and like, okay, well, how do I actually talk about what needs to go into a media kit? I felt myself pulled in all these different directions. And one of the reasons why that answer isn't clean is because the concept of a media kit has changed so much. So I told you a little bit about, like, generally speaking, what a media kit included back in the day when I started my career in PR, like over a decade ago. So it's really simple because there wasn't all this like extra stuff to do. So 10, 11 years ago, most people weren't working with brands on brand partnerships unless you were one of like the early influencers. Wasn't something that a lot of people were pitching. Speaking engagements were not like the sparkly, sexy kind of content thing that they are now. So, while obviously keynote speakers existed and that was something people pitched for, I have to believe that the volume of the amount of people doing that work also wasn't the same. Sponsors and bringing on sponsorship as well. I just think like, and this is something that I have wanted to like avoid saying, but I guess I can't anymore. The world is noisy. Okay. It's oversaturated. There are so many things going on at all times. And I think that's why it makes assets like these so important. But it's really up to you to know like what your goals actually are so you can create the right thing. And not to make this about me, but in a couple weeks, I am hosting the VIP experience for Big Brand Energy Live, where we're actually going to create a media kit during that session. And the kind of like tangent or the aside to that is not everyone is going to walk away from that session with the same type of asset. There are people in that room that want to be speakers, so they're going to walk away with like a speaker media kit. There are people in there that want brand partnerships, so they're going to walk away with a totally different asset. And that's great. And also, if you want to come, use code FAMEREADY to save some money off your ticket. There's like a handful of VIP slots left. VIP really is designed if you want to go deeper into this like visibility personal brand work. It's really designed to be a mini coaching container. So when you get a VIP ticket for Big Brand Energy Live, you get this private, intimate, 10 people max experience on May 14th, which is a month in advance of the main event. You get to come to the main event. You get close proximity to speakers, to sponsors, like front row seating. You also get, this is like not even really announced yet, and I don't even think it will be announced by the time this episode comes out, but you'll also get access to the after party, which is located in the host venue. The after party has 30 spots maximum. Okay. So there are 30 spots maximum for this after party just based on capacity issues. So they're going first and foremost to VIPs, speakers, and sponsors. And if there's any other spots, we'll sell the rest of those tickets. And if you're VIP, you also get at the very end of all of that a follow-up strategy session with me. And why I do this is because I've designed this VIP experience to be a little coaching container. So in that May event, that private, intimate, small group May event, you're going to create a media kit document. And then by the time our follow-up strategy session hits, like you're going to know exactly what you need to use it for, what that looks like, and so on and so forth. So I want to give you a little bit of taste, little bit of a taste. Oh my gosh, words today. I've had a long week. Words today, not my strong suit, but we're going to get through it. And I think this topic is like kind of rattling around in my brain, feeling a little bit overcomplicated. But here's the thing. If I'm feeling that way around this particular topic, surely you are. Okay. So let's dive in. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to provide just like a general overview of what you need to include in a media kit. And then I'll kind of make it like goal specific. So I'll tell you generally what you need to include. And then, like, depending on what your goals are, whether it's speaking engagements, brand partnerships, maybe we'll just use those two examples. Then that you have even more work to do, which who doesn't want more work to do, right? Isn't that what we're all here for? To like really invest the time, energy, and effort into our personal brand? Okay. So let's start off. I know I told you a little bit about what media kits used to be. So let me tell you about what they really are used for now. When you are pitching yourself to brand partnerships, speaking engagements, if you're an event host and you want sponsorships, a media kit is a branded document that basically tells whoever you're pitching everything about you. Everything about you that's relevant to them, I should say, because a media kit is not designed to like bore someone to death. It's not a novel. It's not your life story. It's basically, in the world of investors and bringing on investors in a company, you'd have something called a pitch deck, which explains why your company is valuable, why someone should invest in it. A media kit is effectively the same thing. So Media Kit for personal brands is a document that's branded, beautiful. It reflects you as a brand, like your colors, your fonts. It should look aesthetic, first and foremost. And that Media Kit is really designed to tell whoever you're pitching about you and why they should hire you for whatever you're pitching for. So obviously, the most important things you need to have is an established brand before you create a media kit. If you're someone who doesn't have like a personal brand website yet, if you're not someone who's ever invested in professional content, aesthetics, all of that, stop listening to this episode right now. And I need you to go back to square one. Because as a personal brand, yes, we can say that logos and fonts and colors aren't as important as having like clear positioning and all of that. but you do reach a level in your personal brand where you need these things, where the brand must be clear, where you must be able to put together a branded document and send it off and have it look similar to your website and your Instagram, so your aesthetic carries over to each place you're represented. Okay? So that's essentially what it looks like. And then inside, I'm going to go through page by page, and forgive me, I'm going to look at an example as I go through this just because I don't want to miss anything. So obviously, you kind of have the first title page. The title page should reflect you and your brand, essentially have like an image of you on it, but it should also specify like what this is for. So, like, probably not just media kit at this point, probably like speaker kit or sponsor brand partnerships guide, like, especially if you have multiple files of these. I mean, if you are building a 6-figure personal brand, you will. Like, I have a separate speaker kit, a separate brand partnerships deck, a separate event sponsorship deck. I have different versions of all of these. Do they look similar? Yes, but because their goals are different, some of the content is different. So it's really important on the cover page to specify what it is. So the very first page when someone opens this document after the title page talks about you, who you are, or if this is for your event, what you do. Now, let's say that this is for like speaking or brand partnerships specifically. Because you're a personal brand, that very first page should be a little bit of a bio about you and some of your most notable achievements. So this isn't you just outlining like, this is the function of my business and this is who I serve. This is why you are an impactful figure, a thought leader in your industry. This is the first page where you're really selling someone on who you are. So make sure that like you're really focused on like your biggest impact. And if you're someone who's like, well, I haven't really done anything of significance yet, you're lying. First of all, this is where you need to really celebrate yourself, because if you're someone who's pitching to brand partnerships and speaking engagements specifically, actually, and or if you're someone who's asking people to sponsor your event, you need to be clear on the value you offer and the impact that you have. So this might mean getting creative with some of your work history, and maybe if you're in the middle of a pivot and you don't feel like you have enough content yet, explain that here. But it shouldn't be too long. This is one page. And the one thing I want to make really clear, in your entire media kit, every single page focuses on a different topic, right? So, when you're talking about yourself, you're not giving yourself like 3 pages to talk about you and your bio. It's one slide, one page, and then you're moving on. So this is where you've got to get concise. So really focus on value through all of this. So if this is for like your podcast or your event, that first page is all about you. And then the next page is about the actual event or the podcast, or let's say the asset. Okay. So this is where you are explaining, if this is for brand partnerships for your podcast, this is explaining what makes your podcast unique, the topics you cover, and really diving deep into what the value of your podcast is and how it aligns with who you are as the host, but also differentiating it, because each and every one of your assets as a personal brand has a little bit of a key differentiator, right? So by trade, my job function is personal branding and public relations consultant. This podcast, while it talks about personal branding and PR, we also talk about entrepreneurship and mindset. The concept of fame ready is obviously aligned with the concept of being a personal brand and PR expert, but there's still nuance and there's differences. So when I'm talking about myself as Katrina Owens, the person, giving fame ready its own bio, its own overview, so people know that they're buying into an asset. They're not necessarily buying into me, they're buying into an asset. So it's really important that you have clarity around how you talk about that. We can even use this like when it comes to events. Being able to describe like what your event is, what the goal is really, really important. And you know what's interesting? This is just going to be a little bit of an aside, but I think it's going to illustrate the point really well. Yesterday, I posted just like a series of Instagram stories, like talking about the challenges of planning a large scale event. And wow, the DMs sounded off. People related. It's a topic that really resonated with all my event planning girlies, like on the feed. So I'm talking about this. And then, when you kind of talk about trials and tribulations, people naturally want to help. So I got a couple messages from people like offering advice or insight on like, hey, well, like you should do this. Or like, hey, have you tried messaging it this way? And one thing that I think is really important to know about me, and this could end up being my fatal flaw. I don't think that it is because I mean, I've built my business up to this point, and at this very moment in history, my business is the most successful it's ever been, the most profitable, the most opportunities in alignment, and all that stuff. But some advice that someone gave me was I don't really know, like, from you as a personal brand and public relations consultant, like, how does that tie into the event? And of course, again, nuance. It ties into the event. Obviously, big brand energy, four core pillars: vision, visibility, which is my tie in, capital, and community. But it's so important to understand that this event isn't the Katrina Owens show, right? Like, it's not like this is an event where I just talk for the whole day and deliver sessions on personal branding and visibility. The event serves a larger mission, which is why if you're introducing me as a personal branding and public relations consultant, and then you want to talk about my event in the same breath, they're going to feel disconnected. That's actually a good thing because that means that that event, big brand energy, the concept has enough content, nuance, and positioning to stand alone. And I actually think that's why it's so strong, right? I think it's 60% sold out already, probably even more by the time this episode comes out. And that's because of the strong positioning, the core theme of like bringing your biggest business professional goal to the event and getting an action plan to match. Like, that's super clear. And so that's why in my sponsorship deck for my event, having a separate page where I talk about the event is really important. The event is an asset. It's not me. It is different. And so giving yourself the space to talk about yourself and then the asset is really, really important in whatever you're creating. In a speaker kit, you won't have that, obviously, but you will have a slide that talks about your talks. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay. But let's talk about the next slide that people really need. So this is great for like brand partnerships and event sponsorships. You need to have a slide that's about your audience. Even if you are applying for speaking engagements, being able to clearly dictate the type of audience you speak to is very, very important. So you have one full slide that talks about your core audience demographics. So if it's for your event and brand partnerships, this is who you're talking to, who will be in the room, who listens to the podcast, and then breaking it down. How much money do they generally make? What's the family makeup? Is it mostly moms? Is it people that are, younger? You need to be able to clearly define your audience, especially if you're trying to work with brands in any capacity. Event sponsorships, brands need to know who is in that room that they're investing in. My sponsor, my headlining sponsor, who I'm so excited to announce at the end of this month, in our call to talk about my event, she asked me, my contact at the company asked me, explain to me like who the audience is. Is it influencers or is it personal brands? And I was able to say it is professional personal brands. I don't actually really speak to influencers because that is a different business model than what I believe personal branding is. I think you guys have heard me talk about that on this podcast before, but I was able to articulate that and that aligned with her. And then hence how the sponsorship is now in motion. And so you need to be able to have this slide that really breaks this all down, what people can expect from your audience, because that really is what people are investing in, right? They want to know the types of people that they are speaking to through you. Today's episode is brought to you by Megan Buggy, meta ads and funnel strategist, and author of the upcoming book, This Is Why Your Ads Suck. If you've ever opened Ads Manager, seen disappointing results, and thought, I have no idea what's actually wrong, this book is for you. Megan shows online business owners how to stop guessing, stop blaming the algorithm, and start reading their numbers like a real CEO. Inside the book, you'll learn how to spot the real leaks in your marketing, whether it's your hook, your ad copy, your landing page, or your funnel, and what to fix first so your ads finally bring in leads and sales consistently. If you're ready for ads that feel human, aligned with your values, and actually convert, head to youradbestie.com/early access to join the launch list for the book release. And you'll be able to meet Megan at Big Brand Energy Live this June. Thanks so much, Megan. Now, the next page is what I like to call like a values alignment page, or like what people can expect also. Big Brand Energy and the Fame Ready podcast are actually quite similar in content. At Big Brand Energy, I'm talking about all the things it needs to take your business to the next level. Fame Ready, we talk about all the different things we need to like build a famous personal brand. And in both cases, I use the phrase, believe that anything is possible, including fame. That is a crossover between both of these assets. So in my event sponsorship deck for Big Brand Energy Live, I have a page that's like why brands align with Big Brand Energy. And I actually outline the 4 core pillars of the event: vision, visibility, capital, community. And I explain why it is beneficial for brands to get on board with an event that focuses on those 4 core pillars. Now, in a brand partnership deck, or just like something that's a little bit more general, you also want to talk about, if this is a brand partnership deck and you have podcast opportunities in there, but also content monetization like social media content or your blog or your newsletter, it's really important to highlight your values as a personal brand, what people can expect from you. And so when people start treating their personal brand like a business, they're able to articulate, these are kind of the 4 core things that I talk about as a personal brand. This is what people come to me for. So having this like kind of values alignment, why someone should align with you and the benefit that that has for them is really, really important. So obviously after that, if you're running an event, you get into like event details. So like, I don't think I have to explain what that is: location, time, venue, explaining where it is. If you're creating this, this for brand partnerships, you really want to focus on like the metrics and the analytics. You guys, please don't inflate your analytics. Don't lie. There are so many brands out there that actually want to work with smaller audiences. So don't feel like you need to say you have thousands of podcast downloads when you only have hundreds. Don't feel like you need to inflate anything, because in a lot of cases, at the end of a partnership, that partner is going to want screenshots. Okay. They're going to want a bit of a report of what that experience was like for you and for them. So it's really important that when you're talking about metrics, I mean, this doesn't really happen in an event sponsorship kit, but in a brand partnership kit where you're maybe trying to monetize your podcast or social media following or your email newsletter, outline all of the metrics, all of them. So for podcasts, you kind of want to focus on like monthly downloads, maybe how many subscribers you have. Definitely talk about the consistency of the podcast. So are you producing the podcast weekly? Is it 2 times a week? If you're not doing weekly or 2 times a week, I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be much harder to monetize your podcast. So that's something to think about. Consistency matters for brand partners. If you're talking about social media content, people want to know things like follower count, engagement rate. And if you're talking about email newsletter subscribers, they typically want like amount of subscribers, open rate, click-through rate. And same would go for like maybe a blog, if you're someone who's like monetizing your blog or your Substack also. So having a page that really deep dives into all the metrics is really, really important. Once you have that, you can articulate what these packages actually look like. So in an event sponsorship guide, you are creating different tiers or packages that people can invest in. I will say that for me, I have worked with obviously many brands in event sponsorship capacity, and I create these packages as kind of a guideline for them and for me. In my case, so for Big Brand Energy Live, at this point, we have 5 sponsors, full sponsorship. Actually, we have 6. Full sponsorship roster, by the way. Only 2 were actually asking for the exact deliverables, like only 2 of those those sponsors out of the 6 are people who like looked at the packages and was like, yep, that works. Everyone else, I put together a custom package. And it's because when you're working with larger brands, there are some things that they're going to prioritize over other things. So I've had some sponsors say they don't care about the social media content. They really just care about in-person exposure. And that's great. So I create a custom package that actually doesn't include extra social media or podcast touch points, and I amplify how many in-person or experiential touch points that they have. And so in my brand partnerships kit, when it comes to podcast, ads, social media content, all of that, I'm even more flexible. So what I have is a page that outlines the different types of things people can invest in: podcast ads, social media content, newsletter content, virtual events, and I give a little bit of context around each one. And then I put a starts at line. Okay. So you put a starts at line because it's going to be nearly impossible for you to create these packages. And it's going to be a waste of time too, because brands are going to come in and they're going to know exactly what they want. And so instead of you trying to like mathematically create these different packages, great to have in mind like a baseline. Okay, for X amount of podcast ads, it's this much. And then as you start to get familiar with working with brands, you can start to formalize some of this stuff. They're obviously like the big influencers and those types of people. They have clarity on like one reel costs this much. Right now, the way that I work with brands is very different between brands. So with one particular brand sponsor, I might charge this much. Another one might, be a higher price point because maybe it takes more editing or more time investment on my end, more coordination, and I'll charge a different amount. And so in my brand partnerships kit specifically, I'm not outlining actual packages because I like that flexibility and like really working with the client to understand how I can best serve them. The biggest thing I want you to keep in mind here is packages are great. I really try to stay away from like just selling podcast ads as a standalone. Obviously, you can really increase that bottom line number if you add in different touch points. This is also just better for the brand because just running one type of media or one type of ad likely isn't going to net the result that they like really, really want, just because it takes far more touch points to actually sell something these days. So that's something that's really important to think about too. Okay. So packages, really, really important. Okay. Finally, so 2 more things to go. So the really important thing to have in your partnerships deck is case studies. So if you're new and you haven't, maybe this is your first event that you're fully bringing on sponsors for. If you don't have case studies from an event, maybe you have case studies from a virtual event. At the very least, maybe you have testimonials from clients who have really enjoyed working with you. It's really important that you have some type of social proof in this, because if you don't, how are people going to trust you? So for me and my event sponsorships guide, so the event sponsorships deck that I have for Big Brand Energy Live is the most comprehensive one I've ever put together. Okay. I didn't have one the last time I ran this event when it was 60 people last October. I just put together custom packages for my sponsors. But now this time I've put together this sponsorship kit that obviously has these packages. And because I have some really cool results from the last event that I had sponsors at, I was able to create these case studies, and those have become really important selling features for new sponsors because they can actually show the results, how engaged the audience was, the actual ROI for some of my sponsors, because a lot of my sponsors have a really significant ROI. So that's been really cool to show them. If I was trying to just kind of like put this together and like I didn't have anything like that yet, I would take screenshots, client testimonials, anything that basically enhances the trust that I want this person to feel when they're working with me. I would add those in just under like a slide that says what people are saying or like testimonials. So you have some sort of third party authority in this deck, because it's all fine and dandy for you to just send this over, but there really needs to be a third party perspective when people are making big investments. The best one best example I can give of this actually, because I just invested a pretty significant amount into sponsoring an event that's in the fall. And I like loved the initial concept, loved connecting with the person who is running the event. But I knew that a really good friend of mine that I trusted also knew this person. And so I had like a gut, like, fuck yeah, I'm going to invest in this, even though it was a bit of a stretchy amount. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to invest in this because I just know that this is going to be really, really impactful. But I messaged my friend to just ask, like, hey, I'm thinking about making this investment. I want to make sure that, you think this person can actually fill the room, that'll be beneficial, that you trust her, blah, blah, blah. That person was like, absolutely yes. Great investment, essentially. So I'm like, okay, cool. And so it really just took that little extra added layer. I'm not sure that this person had case studies or like testimonials. This might be the first iteration of this event that she's doing. I actually don't know that part. But for me, because I had a connection, I could just go ask someone else and got the validation that I needed. But as I think about all the sponsors that have come on board for Big Brand Energy Live, I'm not sure that any of them, maybe, one of them came through a referral, but honestly, I'm not sure any of them like went back and forth with someone to be like, do you trust her? Because I had so much proof already in the deck. So that's why that's so important. So if you're someone on the flip side who's applying to speaking engagements, now let's go back to like the packages section. So obviously you're not going to have packages. You might have some like general pricing of like, this is how much I charge for a workshop. This is how much I charge for like a keynote. This is how much I charge for a virtual talk. And so you could have like some pricing in your speaker kit. But the thing that's really important is an outline of the talks. So no more than 3, please. If you have more than 3 different types of talks, you do not have a strong enough personal brand yet, because you should be so specific in what you talk about. For me, I actually have like 3 very different talks that are just for different audiences. I have one that's like strictly for corporate. Okay. It is how I talk to corporate executives or corporate audience about building personal brand. That is not a talk that I give anywhere else. So I have that outlined in my speaker kit. In addition with that, I have a standard keynote that I give, the FAME formula. I'm actually going to be changing it. So that's going to get a little bit of a refresh, but it is that same keynote all the time. That's what people have hired me for the last year. Then I have like community workshops. So this is like if someone was like, hey, could you do, actually a great example of this, when this episode comes out, I'll be at Power Table Live in Florida. Power Table Live in Florida asked me to do a like audience building workshop, like creating content creation for audience building. That's a very specific workshop that's custom. But in my speaker kit, I have a section that basically talks about like, for unique circumstances, if you have like a talk that you really envision for an audience, here are some examples of what that could look like. Because workshops tend to be a little bit more custom, because there's usually a very tangible outcome that person wants, that the host, I should say, wants their audience to get from that. So if you're a speaker, that's what you would have. And you'd also have reviews, testimonials, links to your videos of you speaking. Crucial. Okay. If you don't have that yet, then make sure there's video of you talking on your social media feed. Make sure you're going on podcasts, actively pitching yourself to podcasts, so you can start to build up that experience too, because big part of that speaker kit is linking to the sizzle reel. And if you don't have that, I'm going to say most of the time that you're spending pitching to speaking engagements is actually a waste of time. And we hate wasting time here. Okay. And then at the very end of any media kit, make sure you have contact information, your email, links. Like even if this is a PDF document, make sure everything is linked to your website, your social media, all of those things. So people can actually like click off and see what you're talking about. This is just like my pet peeve with any type of PDF. If the things aren't actively linked, it's a problem. So just make sure that you're doing that piece. So there you have it, you guys. I know that was quick and dirty, But I just really wanted to give you an overview of like what you need in this document. Obviously, it's custom. Obviously, depending on what your goals are, what your needs are, what you're working towards, this really differs. And at the end of the day, this is why the programs and events that I run are really important, because there isn't a one size fits all document or asset that is going to work for each and every personal brand. I mean, even if I think about a speaker kit, if you're someone who speaks to more corporate audiences, that speaker kit is going to look really different than if you're someone who speaks to high school students, for example. I'm judging and speaking at a high school event in a couple weeks, so that's why that's top of mind. So keep that all in mind as you start to build all of this stuff out. If you get stuck along the way, this is why the Fame Ready Entrepreneur Program exists. I help women create these types of assets and make sure that they're actually ready to start getting out there and securing the press and opportunities that they want. And obviously making sure that each and everything that they create is actually worth the time and sometimes financial investment too, if you're buying a template, to actually like bring this to life. I hate to see people waste time. I think a habit that we all maybe have as entrepreneurs is we get a little Canva happy and we end up spending like all this time in Canva creating things that we never end up using. So my goal really for each and every one of my clients is, if we're investing time into creating something, let's not only make sure that's something we actually use, let's make sure it's something that actually gets the answer that we're looking for. That answer being, yes, I will pay you so much money to speak on the stage, to be a brand partner, all of that fun stuff. So if you like this episode, please rate and review this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify. It would mean the world. Please follow me over on Instagram at Katrina Owens PR. You can follow the podcast at Get Fame Ready. Connect with me on LinkedIn, chat with me. I don't know, on Threads. I'm actually trying to stay off Threads these days. It's wearing on my consciousness right now. Just connect with me wherever you are. This podcast is gaining a lot of traction. I am getting the most daily downloads I've ever seen before in my last year of doing this. So that's really exciting. That just means more opportunities for me to work with brands and to share all of the incredible statistics of this podcast in my own media kit. So if you like this podcast, please, please, please give me a rating, follow me over on Instagram, and I'll see y'all next week. Toodles.